Hello there. I wanted to share a few ideas, strategies for um, practicing your English language sounds, pronunciation, and speech. I wanted to start with a quick example. When I finished my PhD in rhetoric and writing, a field of communication studies, somebody asked me, I was down in Kentucky, a state in the US, what do you do? I said, I'm a student. What do you study? I said, I'm a PhD student. And she said, P what? I said, PhD, PhD. And she said, I don't get that. So I thought maybe she has no idea what PhD means. So I said, PhD. Oh, PhD. All right. Now, if I was in other contexts outside of America, outside of Kentucky, people would easily understand PhD. Whether you say PhD or PhD or PhD or PhD, that wouldn't matter. But I realized that in America, they only understand how they speak. The same would be true in other contexts, which are not so multicultural, in more homogeneous contexts. So I thought I could have made it easier for this woman to understand by saying it like they do in Kentucky, in Rome, do what the Romans do. So the point of this story is to say that if I was not in Kentucky in a very European American white middle class people who do not understand any other kinds of English situation, then I was fine. She was wrong, I was right. But in that particular context, I had to learn how to speak for that particular group of people. So the idea is not you have to change your language for the sake of somebody else, but you need to be conscious of your audience. If your audience is not Indian or Bangla speaking or Nepali speaking or Spanish speaking, then you become conscious that your non-standard sounds can make it harder for the other person to understand. Don't say Ben because pen sounds like Ben in your home language if you're outside of your home language situation. Don't call Peter or Peter beater or bitter uh, when you want to say it the way that Peter understands. Um, so this is the kind of reason why it is important to say words in ways that are more than local, that transcend the boundaries of your local way of saying. Even if you don't want to say it in the standard American or the standard British way, that's okay. But if in English in general, ba and pa are two different sounds, then go ahead and start distinguishing those two sounds instead of simply calling party a bardy. That matters. So distinguishing by knowing who you're talking to uh, is important, even if talking in the standard British or the standard American way is no longer that important in today's world. So that is the distinction that I want to discuss and show. Chapter one is about the sounds. It is not enough to learn about speaking. This video is trying to show you the exact difference from South Asian languages like Nepali, Hindi, and Bangla. And recently, I also learned, as I'm learning Spanish, all Spanish sounds and English sounds are different. So let me show you one by one. But if you're going to watch the rest of this video, please promise to me that you're going to stop the video and practice the sound. If you don't do that, it's no good wasting your time on this video. You can just stop the video and forget about it. Let's look at this example. In Nepali and Bangla and Hindi in South Asia, this sound does not exist. Fish, lower lip and upper labiodental does not exist. So we replace it with a. Unfortunately, that sound is a different sound in English because it is not piss. In English, it is piss. But piss means urine. So don't say, I need piss. at a fish store, or especially outside a fish store. I learned that Spanish has this problem. There's no the in Spanish, so you'll end up saying ban instead of van. Unfortunately, ba is a different sound in English. Same thing with flor in Spanish does not exist in English. So anybody learning the Spanish way of saying flor would insult a woman whose name is Flor by saying floor. So that's the difference we are talking about. Now, let us look at them more carefully. There are not many of them. If we simply go to South Asia and want to correct some of the sounds that do not exist in Nepali, Bangla, Hindi, then we can put it all in one picture. Because they don't exist, we can't simply say, okay, I'm going to replace with whatever I want. Well, if you need to communicate with Japanese and the Russians and Europeans and Americans, you will need to learn that this is lower lip, upper teeth. Similarly, this is the van. So I make a list of 100 words with an sound and say them right. The other one in South Asia that does not exist is think, thought. It's not there. It's not they. When you do that, the other speakers of English can get confused. It's okay in South Asia. The moment you get out of South Asia, you may need to use these two, thunder and thus, not thunder and thus. They don't explode, they flow. Thunder and thus, like van and fan. These two make a friction up here. This one make a friction between the teeth. Your tip of the tongue is visible. Think and they. The third sound that can make a difference is different in English compared to South Asian languages. It is not ha. It is not hi. It is not home. It doesn't come from here like ga, ba. It does not. It comes from here. Hi, house, hello. The moment you start making that small amount of change from hello, house to hello, house, the words can sound easier to understand. This category, as I already mentioned, are not pen, but pen. Say it exactly like the pa or this pa in Bangla. Talk, not talk. Car, not car. Spanish speakers need to also pay attention to these because in Spanish, they are pen, dog, and car, also like South Asian. There are three jaws in English. What I have found is that there are not many words with the middle jaw, so you can just forget about it. However, there is a distinction between the first one, which sounds like a s, that is a zoo. This one is a ja, ja, not sh, zoo. You can ignore the middle, it's more like ja. No need to spend time on it, but try to distinguish the stew and just. One is more like a ja, the other one is like z. Another set for South Asians is not really because we don't have the sound, we do. W, wa, and Y, ya, we do. However, interestingly, when we put these sounds with vowels of different types, we are unable to make them. For example, we can't say one, so we say one. We can say want because we have many words with wa, wari, pari, wal, waka. We have these words, wa, names of places, waling. We have them. But interestingly, we don't have e, we. So we make it will, not will. Ul, not wool. So we need to learn to put the i, u, e, o in the W. That means we need to learn to say one, will, wool, well, and war. The same thing with y, yeah. We cannot say yuck, so we may end up saying yuck. We do have the like wa. We do say yam, yani, and so on. But we need to learn how to say ye, like year, or ye, yell, or York. So we shouldn't say New York, New York. It is New York. And finally, we also need to make the distinction between sa and the other sha. If we don't do that, we will not distinguish between sit down and shit. So these are for South Asian, mostly some cases Spanish. Now let us see how Spanish speakers may struggle with the sounds. I learned that the most important difference in Spanish versus English sound system is that not only vowels, I'll get to that in a moment, but consonant sounds that are double. For example, if you say this word quickly, it will sound robbed. There's a b and there's a d. Consonant, consonant. Don't look at the vowel, letter, but look at the sound, robbed. So Spanish speakers don't seem to produce b, d, or sa, ta, k, ta, ma, ba. Those two consonants do not seem to go together because Spanish language favors single consonants and single vowels. And so they end up not saying the da, but simply say rob, rob. It should be robbed, jumped, ta, shaft, breakfast, mind, word, rd, lapsa, wasapa, right? Student, and then prompt. So this is Buddha, Buddha, fata, fata, nada, rada, are said fast as robbed, jumped, shaft, breakfast, mind, ward, lapse, wasp, student, prompt. The consonant sounds that are doubled seem to be difficult for Spanish speakers, so please make a list of 100 words with these patterns. You can find many when on the internet. If you Google, you can make a list and practice. Just stop and practice. Don't just learn. It's not enough to know, please remember. Another one is in Spanish, also like in South Asian languages. The beginning there is sa, ka, and it turns out instead of using the ska, sta, it looks like Spanish speakers will say school. The word school in Spanish is escuela. And the other one in Spanish is because the ha is silenced in the spelling versus speaking, they might use horse instead of horse, house instead of house, but once you learn that it's a different sound, ha, then you should start actually saying it instead of skipping it, like in Spanish. The other set in Spanish is again think and them, not them, not think. Another one that I learned in Spanish that is different from English is the and ba. Again, as I said, best and vest are different. Ban and van are different. And if there are other sounds that I did not cover, you find yourself by doing your own study. I'm not a insider to Spanish language, so go ahead and find and practice. Let's move on to something more practical. How do you actually practice then? Number one, you practice by listing the sounds and distinguishing between the sounds in the same language. Another one is you list the sounds and distinguish them into different languages. In this case, however, we're looking at the whole set of vowel sounds that are very difficult for Spanish speakers in particular, because Spanish speakers don't seem to have all of these vowel sounds. They seem to have just 5 instead of 20. And that means when they speak, their vowels sound like all mushed into 5 instead of distinct sounds. But let's start with the South Asian. Cup. It's not exactly it's not exactly it's somewhere in between. Cup. Don't say cop, cop. Cup. Almost then there's an actual ah. So you can distinguish between the two. Arm, father, that's actual long ah, but cup is short. Yeah, that's another difficult one. People don't say cat, they might say card or kite in the case of Indian English. It's not kite, it's not Blake, it's black, cat. These are some simple ones. Met, bed, or away, cinema. They are simple ones. This one is a little difficult because it's a long as in learn or turn. Usually for British without the R, it's uh, like ah. Now then there's the shorter hit and longer C or seed. Hit, heed, sit, seed. Similarly, ooh, you have the shorter and longer put, pool, could, cool, book, food. And then we were looking at this one. Interestingly, in American English, this sounds like ah, so it is hot rock. But on the rest of the world, this is hot rock. So this is the short O compared to the long O. Call, for. So ah, short, long, independent, independent, long long E, O, long O in British, in American, and U, long U. So these are the 12 vowels that distinguish the English vowel system from other language vowel systems. And then these are double vowels that English language makes. I as in five, I or like. Ow as in now or out. A as in say or eight. The problem with South Asian languages is that we don't have A, so we simply say E. So se, it, they. No, stop and say gate, late, hate, mate, rate, eight. Stop and say it. Similarly, O, this is not O. That is different from the call, for. This is go. So don't depend on the letter. Make a list of all the words that have the O sound, like go, home, no, so, both. Then practice them one by one, eliminate them one by one. Then there's the oi, boy, and join. It's not boy and join, it's boy. Very simple, O-E. Ea often comes with the ra. Ea often comes with the ra. Ua often comes with the ra. Air, where, air, near, here, near, here. Pure, tourist, ua, pure tourist, or poor tourist. So that is how you distinguish sounds within the sound system, because vowels are a little less distinct than the consonants are distinct, right? And that makes it harder for you to practice them. So look at the list, make a list of words, and practice. Now, if you look at how to deal with that further, you might want to compare them A with the A. So that may be the confusion, right? Instead of met, made, bed, bade, et, aid, set, said, let, laid. Another confusion may be between A and air. So met, where, bed, air. So whatever you want to distinguish, try to make that connection and distinguish, compare and contrast. Similarly, the call and go, or this O, hot and home, distinguish that by comparing anything that seems similar but is really not similar. This one is oo, this is oo. Okay, another most practical method, even better than simply comparing and contrasting the sounds by themselves, is practicing at the level of words. So what you do is you download the 3,000 core academic vocabulary or 3,000 general English vocabulary, and then say them one by one. That's one method. Another method is don't say random words. Say all the words with the p, pen, pal, pain, pull, p, p. And then say all the words that are difficult because your language has a similar sound or does not have that sound, like fabric, face, fact, factor, factory. Say that. So you will learn to you will develop your muscle memories, your mouth muscles to say it correctly, and you might be able to say it when you speak faster and fluently. Valley, van, vast, vat, variety, vault. That's one method, right? Another one is to put words that are similar, but, cup, dug, duck, thumb. But you could also compare the bun with barn, burn, and bun, or bun and barn. I may have forgotten to put the ahs here, but put words, not sounds, and compare and contrast. Not only practice in isolation as bun, butt, cup, dug, duck, thumb, but also in bun, burn, fun, fern, learn, learn. There's no word like learn. That is another method. And you can also create these contrasted pairs. Got, gore, not, nor, dot, door, lot, law, stop, store, pot, pour. This kind of contrasted pair can be very helpful for practice. If and o are difficult for you, make pairs like that and practice. Not, node, not, know, walk, wogue, chalk, choke, clock, cloak. Whatever is difficult for you, make that pair and practice. If you want to, learn these symbols, because these symbols will help you to look up the dictionary and know exactly how to pronounce. Okay? Otherwise, just learn by creating pairs of words or simply downloading contrastive pairs of vowel sounds and consonant sounds, contrastive pairs of words involving vowel sounds and consonant sounds, contrast between English to English, and contrast between your language and English similar sounds. But you need to create lots and lots of material for yourself to practice. Same thing with the consonants. Fool, pull, fall, pull, volley, volley. Don't pronounce V-O-L-L-Y as volley. That's not volleyball. It's volleyball. It's not bet. It's vet. It's not pen. It's pen. It's not party. It's party. It's not ton. It's ton. It's not talk. It is talk. Let's go on to chapter 2. So far, we have been looking at distinct sounds. Now we're looking at how to actually pronounce words so that we are not only paying attention to sound, but also stress. One of the really fascinating things in English is that words are not only strings of sounds. If you simply say chapter, important, pronunciation in the same volume with the same stress, people cannot understand the word. Sometimes they may not even think you're speaking English. English has something called the stress, which is the force. Some of the syllables come with lower force, other syllables come with higher force. So in the word important, you say im and nt at the end with low force, no stress. Pour is high stress. The moment you add pour, it begins to sound like English. If you say important, it sounds like, what do you mean? Important? Important, look it up. It's a very different word. Important is a different word, not because of the sound alone, but because of the stress. If you don't put the stress in the right place, the pronunciation does not help. So when you say chapter, you're using stress in the first part, chapter. If you say chapter, the listener will look at you and think, what? So where you put the stress makes a whole lot of difference. In English, in other languages, it doesn't really matter. Many languages, including South Asian. Pronunciation. So here is the stress. Pronunciation. Now, in order to really learn stress, you may think, okay, I will use the rules of stress. If there are 2 syllables and it's a noun, it goes in the first syllable. If it's 2 syllables, it's a verb, it goes into the second syllable. Forget that. Because English language is made of so many words from so many different languages, the way they are pronounced and the way they are stressed, really word by word. So basically, the best idea is to take your 3,000 word vocabulary, go to Google pronunciation, enter the word, and just play this sound. If you click on this, it'll produce the sound. You can listen. And then you can also practice. You can click on this microphone button. It'll allow you to say it. And once you say it, it'll analyze and it'll tell you, okay, you put the stress in the wrong place. So that would be a good way to practice. Or you could download an app and put the word and listen to it. Put the word, listen to it. Just notice, notice, notice. Oh, so it's important, not important. It's important, not important. So when you say Google, the first one is stressed. Using Google pronunciation. So overdo it in the beginning. So say pronunciation until you feel like, that's odd. But gradually you'll adapt and make it natural. So it's okay to overperform sometimes. Practice common words. Create your tough word list. So these are the words, let's say if these are the words that are difficult for me, then I would list these words and I would practice them. I would make sure that abdominal, absorption, accelerate, acceleration. See how it changes because of what is attached at the end or beginning? Accent, accumulate, second, accumulation, accuracy, beginning, accurately, beginning, acid, first, acidic, second, activate, first, actively, first, acute, second. So you can't say adjectives first, noun second. That basically doesn't work. Adaptation, adaptive, adjacent, admission, admit, but admission, adolescent, adverse. I think in British it's adverse, but Americans say adverse. Repertoire, obtain, distribution, parameter, aspect, dynamic, impact, domain, publish, denote, authority, semantic, par, ion, matrix, linear. So you should learn how the word is pronounced and where the stress falls. And if you can practice all of the most common academic vocabulary and learn how to say it and how to stress it, then only can you make your speech more legible. So English word pronunciation is a package of sound plus stress. If you take out the stress, the sound only is not helpful. Of course, you need to practice the sound to get the foundation, but you need to practice along with the stress to understand pronunciation. Now, I don't want to really go into this. Tone is somewhat important, but tone differs from one country and context to another. But there's not many rules of tone. Yes, no questions are asked with the rising tone kind of thing. Is that right? You say, right? Up. How did that happen? Goes down because it's a close-ended question. So there are a few rules which are more applicable in the case of intonation, but go ahead and learn how to sound your sentences and your clauses in a way that the listener can follow better. I'm not going to go into the depth of this. It is important for you to learn. I just wanted to point out it is important, and you might want to spend a few hours on that on your own. I'm not going to go into the contraction, which makes your words sound more like English, as they say, but really doesn't matter. As a non-native English speaker, don't worry about it. You might want to say can't, what's, did ya, how'd ya? But then you'll begin to sound like a cartoon if you do that. So maybe in some cases like can't and what's is okay. If you go too far, you're not going to sound like a native English speaker. You want to sound like a joker. Similarly, accent, don't even go there unless your local accent is so far away from what people can understand, in which case you may need to come to the middle where they can really understand. So if you speak like singing, accent is a matter of a unique tone and unique pronunciation and sounds as well as other localizations and pitch. If you speak so very different from whatever other people speak, then you may need to adopt a less local and very, very sing-song, very unique and very exotic accent. You might want to push away from the very exotic type but don't spend a lot of time. Don't invest too much on this. And finally, when you put it all together, here are some tips and techniques. That's all I wanted to say. I didn't want to go into too much detail, didn't want to make the video long. I will repeat, please, please do not just learn. If you don't practice, this video is totally a waste of time. Pause and practice, but don't take it lightly. If you can say fish when you want to and piss when you want to, you are a better speaker. Don't make an excuse. Oh, piss is okay in Nepal. Piss is okay in India. Fine. Oh, van is okay in Spanish-speaking places. Fine. That's not the point. If you want to be heard and listened to and understood by someone beyond your local community, you may really need to learn the English sound because there is no doubt it is a unique sound and nobody's asking you to become British. That is a unique sound spoken by people that speak the language called English. That is a unique sound. So distinguish, make contracted pairs, practice on word list. Beyond the pronunciation, these other issues of intonation, accent, and contraction are not the most important, but go all the way from sound to pronunciation to stress. Those three items are absolutely important. I hope you found the video useful, especially if you practice. I think you can make a difference in a few weeks if you focus and practice. Bye-bye.